Hi, I'm Germaine Franco, and I'm here with John Powell, Moose, Marigold, and Winston, and we're going to talk about the score for Wicked for Good. John, thanks for having me here. It's really great to be back here, and I came up this hill many times, probably thousands of times, as an assistant to John Powell. And so it's really fun for me to sit here and ask you questions when I've seen you create scores in 6 weeks and 6 months and crazy singing sessions and all kinds of things. I've learned so much from you, and I'm really grateful to you. But I'm also the composer of scores like Tag and Dope and Dora and Lost City of Gold and Canto, and recently The Mother for Nikki Caro. And I feel like I got my training from the John Powell School of Film Music. So thank you for that.
Oh, God.
And now we're going to talk to John and the dogs, if they wake up, about his work on Wicked for Good. It's an amazing new score of 60 minutes, brand new score, not all based on Wicked 1. And I remember the very first time I walked into your studio, you were super busy, and you looked at me and said, make yourself useful. And my question is, how did you make yourself useful as part of the music team with Stephen Schwartz and Stephen Aramis for Wicked and Wicked for Good?
Yeah. Useful I was probably just busy, and I couldn't think of what to tell you to do because I just couldn't think of anything. But actually, it has become a bit of a mantra of mine now, which is, can I be useful? I realised that why not sort of make sure I'm cast in things that I'm good at, and don't go after things that other people can either do better or can do as well. So I think when the call came in about this one, because I knew Stephen, but I had not worked with Stephen for many years since Prince of Egypt, it was a question of, well, I don't know the musical. And that was a kind of a difficult thing to tell everybody. I mean, I discussed it with Mike Knobloch at the beginning and said to him, do you think that'll make a difference? And he didn't really know. So my argument was, in the same way I was on Rio, which was kind of, I was the only non-Brazilian in the gig, it was kind of somebody who would represent the rest of everybody who didn't know Wicked. That was part of the idea. But then it could also have gone against me. They could have said, no, fuck off, we need somebody who actually knows what he's doing about this. But it turned out there were so many other people who knew the musical and knew everything about it, obviously including Stephen Schwartz. So it turned fine, and I was this useful film person who was coming into a world of Broadway. Mm-hmm. And so everything I knew about film I could apply, and I do also like Broadway songs and Broadway music. So, and I liked Stephen's stuff, always did, but I just didn't happen to know Wicked. So it was kind of a good world to join, and I had to accept that I was the outsider, but that was what I was going to be useful for, I think.
And you brought that vision of making it cinematic and turning the musical into this cinematic extravaganza with John Chu, which is kind of one of your strengths, is working on musicals, starting with the first film I worked with you, which was Happy Feet, Rio, the Lorax.
Yeah.
It's a different process. Am I correct?
It definitely is. Yeah, I mean, you did Encanto, and that was a hell of a musical. So it's definitely different. It's a totally thing, and you have to love the idea of people bursting out into song. I mean, It's like if you don't like that idea, I don't think it's going to kind of make much sense to you. But the fantasy of people singing when it's impossible to say things with words is not that far away from how I feel about music anyway. Mm-hmm. I just don't do it, obviously, because it would be embarrassing. I hear music when I'm stuck for words. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why I always watch the films without any score. In this case, I watched them with the songs only. So as soon as somebody started singing, some music would come in while they were singing, and as soon as they stopped singing, there would be no music. So it was kind of a weird way to see the films the first time. But it it meant I can hear things as the emotions pass, and that's all I tried to stick to. I mean, John was the one who saw the musical when he was 19 in San Francisco on an early run of it, and so it was probably not quite the musical that we know today, but I think it exploded in his brain, and I think he was going to become a filmmaker and a storyteller because of that musical. So this has been in his blood forever, and he's been probably waiting to make this forever. So I had to come along and try and help do that. The thing that he knew as a filmmaker, though, was that there was a different language going on. Mm-hmm. And, you know, by this time I'd done 67 films. The first Wicked was 68, I think, and the second one was 70. I did Dragons in between. But I had the language, I guess, of cinema kind of baked into how I worked. And that is a very different sort of approach to the material from anybody who comes from a Broadway sort of experience. Mm-hmm. And Stephen even himself, he was, the story he told me was that they were talking about me and they were saying, oh yeah, John Powell is good. And then he's on a plane watching a film and he thinks, oh, this is really understated and kind of very cinematic, but very, very, it's like coloured air. He's like, I wonder if somebody like this could do it. And then he got to the end of the film and it was me. It was Don't Worry Darling.
Oh really?
Yeah, he didn't think I'd done it, but so then I think that cemented it in Stephen's mind. Yes, he can do the big stuff. I know he can do the musical things. He can do action, blah blah blah. But he can also do this, the stuff that Stephen says to me. He says, "Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense how you do that stuff, you know." Mm-hmm. And it's a cinematic language. Definitely, it's not something that would work terribly well, I think, in the proscenium march. Mm-hmm. No, I didn't do the songs. I didn't write the songs. I've had these wonderful moments when people say, "Oh, you're part of Wicked, yeah." I'm the composer, yeah. Oh, I just love that song you wrote. Fortunately, I didn't write that. I wish I had, but I didn't. So yeah. So I didn't write the songs, but I didn't even arrange the songs or orchestrate the songs. There was a couple of times I did, but that was because they were sort of looped into the score so much. But most of the time, my job was to make sure that, the music from a song flowed out the end of it, kept going, and had the shifts and the changes and the slips of time, the flips of emotion, the flexibility, and then before you knew it, you were right into another song, and keep some of these themes, keeping the language of the songs going, keeping the harmonic language, keeping the rhythmic language going. And the irony is, I suppose, in theory, my work was supposed to be not something anybody noticed. That's the truth of it. That's what the gig is. You're supposed to really hear the songs, and that was the job. Fine. But it has turned out kind of that people seem to be noticing the score a bit, which is either means I've done it well, or I've done it a little more than I should have, but I don't think John would have let me. Mm-hmm. He gave me shit if I stuck my head up, on the parapet too much. Mm-hmm. But there are moments when you're going to hear the score, which is totally out of some of the themes, and there's going to be moments when it's totally out of themes that are nothing to do with the songs, because it had to be, and that was the right thing to do. So, I mean, it's a slightly weird gig, yeah, to do a musical where everybody knows the songs and they don't really want to be listening to the score, but you have to make the score work real well, and that was what I was paid to do.
Yeah, and if you listen to the score from the theatrical play, it's quite different. It was not like you could reuse all of that.
No, the requirement is very different. I mean, they're brilliant. The guys who did the stuff on stage, it's so effective and efficient how it works, and with the band and everything, and it's like, but the eye is in a different place on this story. The eye is through the lens in the cinema, and it requires a very different set of different set of approaches, techniques, tools, all the things that I guess I've done a lot of. I'm glad that I didn't try and do this earlier in my career, because I might not have done it as well. So even though I guess there's a musical, basis for all of the songs, I think in the score I also I went digging in lots of other treasure troves. Obviously, also Wizard of Oz, the original score, which was brilliant. But those guys were also influenced by a lot of the people that I'm influenced by. So there's Foray in there, and there's Rite of Spring, and there's a lot of Stravinsky. There's obviously The Door is, my usual sort of suspect to that, which is Ray Vaughan Williams. There's all that stuff as I'm soaked in. I found that stuff because it always felt like the right emotion that I was needing. But I always like to say that my memory is so bad that it shouldn't sound. It's never going to sound too much like that, because I can't quite remember the details, or the details get confused. That's somebody asked me the other day, what makes you sound like you, and I said just a bad memory, really, because I can't quite remember how something goes, but I also like this other thing, and I can't quite remember that. So I try them at the same time, and as soon as it starts sounding interesting to me, then it is what it is, and I forget where it all came from, like a lot of people. If I had a better musical memory, I'd be in danger of quoting things all the time, which I try not to do.
Well, but we have to remember that you grew up sitting behind your dad playing tuba in the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah.
So
well, he was playing tuba.
He was playing tuba. Yeah. Your babysitting was
babysitting went wrong that day, so I would get stuck behind the trombones. Right. Yes, no, absolutely, and I do have a penchant for the brass section, which they both like, and obviously it's very hard on them sometimes as well.
They do love playing your scores.
Yeah, I've lost a few players on sessions before. We had an ambulance once. That was
an ambulance. I wasn't in that.
No, I think I hurt a horn player once.
I was at a gig where we were doing saxon for 2 days, and his lip was bleeding.
Gosh,
I remember that.
Oh dear.
But
poor soul, no, I mean, these players we get to work with, they are brilliant, and I mean that's the joy of the gig. That's by the way, that's the joy of this gig. It's like they give us some money, and they give us facilities and players and this stuff that be very hard to otherwise get. That's where we've had fun, I think. So again, trying to be useful for John's vision, trying to be useful for Stephen's vision, and yes, I love musicals, but the thing I also was aware of, and the thing that we spent a lot of time on this was that somebody said to me, how do you do the transitions? One of the ways I realised I do is I start the transition about 3 minutes before the song.
Right.
Because if you're not in the right position, in the right angle, when you hit the song, it just bumps. Anyway, it's key structures, rhythms, timbres, all these kind of things. And I would basically think, there's a song coming in 3 minutes. So everything I do needs to allow that to unfold in a way that the song is inevitable. And I think that was one of the things we learnt on number one, and we had to do again on number two. So.
And it's so seamless. It just flows from score to song.
So. It's like I don't like watching musicals where you can hear, it's the score. The score kind of comes to an end, and you go, somebody's going to sing. It should just kind of be there, and you suddenly realize, oh, wait, they're singing now. I mean, that's I think the ideal. It's very, very hard to do. And obviously for some people, if anybody out there hates musicals, they're always going to be surprised by people singing, but
Well, can you talk, you did such an amazing job, and I was so blown away when I heard the score to Wicked for Good, because I knew you had written 60 minutes of new score for Wicked 1, and then now there's over 60 minutes of new score for Wicked for Good, and you have themes, and you have this incredible group of cues that are supporting the narrative. How did you come up with the themes that you used for Wicked for Good? Were they, related to Wicked 1? You had said that Wicked is really just one film. It just happened to be 2 years apart.
Yeah. I mean, that first time I saw the movie was when everything kind of emotionally went in. I knew the story. I knew where we were going. Finding the tone of the first one, then that took 6 months, and then we managed to get through that one. And some material needed to be written for that. I wasn't expecting that. I was trying to develop everything out of Stephen's material. But no, once we really got into the first one, it suddenly realised, okay, we're going to have things, because it needs music that people are not recognising as being from Wicked. I hid a lot of things, but then it also needed new material. And when it came to number 2, John said up front, is going to be even more of that. So I would pick places and I would start just trying some stuff out. I mean, obviously, Stephen and I had lots of conversations before we got going on number 2 as well. We sat for days, like playing around with things, experimenting, you're sort of looking at all the material, what it meant, why it was there, and also me really absorbing Stephen's kind of storytelling as well. He is a brilliant dramaturg, apart from being a brilliant composer. But I'd already absorbed as much of his musical language as I could. So then I kind of just ran with it, and in certain scenes, that's where a lot of the material sort of started. Like there's a bunch of betrayal in one particular scene where after the wedding, and a lot of material came out there. Just things for Glinda, things for lying and betrayals, and then things for what we call the exodus of the animals. And that a lot of these things, the trick is to try and make it sound like it comes out of Wicked, so it doesn't. It's not alien to it, but it is coming out of Stephen's, the way he plays, the way he writes. Me trying to pick up as much of that as possible. But there's a lot of new material. There's more new material in this than there was in the first one.
Really?
It was just the nature of the storytelling.
So you got a nomination for the last one.
Yeah.
And people will be wondering, well, what's different about this score?
Yeah.
And I think you've just answered that question.
Well, yeah, I mean, trust me, people have to realise, if I could have just copied and pasted the first film into this one, I would have been very happy. But unfortunately, I could not. We knew some things were going to be, linked, and some things were referenced. And there was a few moments, obviously, but on the whole, no, I was dig this whole thing right from the beginning again. It was just the tone of it just shifted enough that that stuff wasn't. The first film was much more about the joyful
yes
aspect of kind of falling in love, as it were, and this was about realizing who you were, and Glinda realizing who she was much more. So whole new bunch of stuff for Glinda, and there was no way to avoid doing it. If I could have, I would have, but I couldn't. So.
Right. So it feels like there's moments where it's more intense and dark and rhythmically so precise, and the motion is always going forward with the narrative. Not always, but often. And I just want to ask you a question, like, how did you get such incredible rhythmical sense when you don't even dance?
Yes, this is a big bone of contention between me and my feet. Which is, yes. I love dance, absolutely love dance. I was watching Singing in the Rain the other day, and I was just realising, oh my God, I should be Donald O'Connor. And yet, my body says no. I have a decent sense of rhythm, but I think the thing that I found in film is that, this is closer to an animation film than you'd think, in the sense that with animation, you're used to kind of lots of shifts. I can't tell you how many shifts there are in scenes that are needed and very much prescribed by John. He is very precise about where the story is turning each moment, and it's not just where it's obvious. There's a lot of other stuff going on in his every scene of his. So I had to try and keep flipping from one angle to another, many times in even scenes then you don't really realize it. So trying to find the rhythms of those, again, it's up to filmmakers sometimes to give you good material, and then it's easier. So between Maya and the editor and John, stuff was cooking, you could tell, but not until pretty late in the game, to tell you the truth. As is John's like me, he focuses eventually. So we kind of all got to this moment when it was like, we're very close to the end. We need to actually make up our minds about this, and then finally the picture started to settle. I started to do things. John would focus, and then we would suddenly see, okay, this is how this scene's going to work. But of course, even then, you have to. What becomes very hard is the overall tone is built out of all these pieces, and you can't really know exactly how it's going to work until really late on the day. So we were still trying things on the dub stage, and he didn't think that was something that he could necessarily do with a composer. On the first one, I discovered, I think he thought I was going to, on the first one, just before we went to score, he kind of had it out with me and was like, are you just going to go off and record this score and then disappear and I'll never see you again? And I said, I wish, but no, I'll probably be there until the end of the dub, just fucking around with everything. And it was the same on this one as well. Yeah. It's the only way to do it. You can't really tell what the film is until it appears. So if you're part of the group of people making things appear, it's coming up right in front of you and you're starting to see it, and then you suddenly realize things about it, and then you have to change them, and then you realize that that's changed the context of something else. So it's really a kind of a chicken and egg things. It's iterative all the time. It's like, you play with the ending, that's changing the middle, and etc. So within every scene it was like that, and within the whole film it was a very global kind of view that John had, and I had to try and keep up with him on these things.
What about the bums? I mean, that is sort of a sound, a vocal sound.
That's
the
true.
Use of choir, and the way you use the choir through, throughout the narrative for very intense dark scenes, and then rhythmically for the quiet, playful moments, the bums.
Yeah. Now it's funny. You live with a singer. You suddenly learn a lot about writing for choir. No, it is true, and also, we've got to this point in Los Angeles where the choir here is actually extraordinary. It's thanks to the master chorale and lots of incredible session singers as well, and sort of that mix that we can use of them. No, we've got there, and people don't realise, even though the rest of it was recorded in London, we can, for a variety of union reasons and difficulties and blah blah blah. They're brilliant in London, of course, it's wonderful. They're brilliant here, the players. But as far as choirs count, thanks to SAG, with a really smarter kind of, figuring out some of the rules, we've been able to have this was a 60-piece choir, and we recorded it at MGM Studios, where Wizard of Oz was done. And it's much easier than composers think. I mean, it works extremely well here. I mean, and also, you can do things here with choirs that are very hard to do in the rest of the world. We're shifting from, full on Broadway to Bulgarian sound to, some of the finest classical singing you ever heard in the world. So it's a really, really flexible sort of group of musicians in those choirs. Yeah, so that was a joy. But it's obviously, I wake up in the morning and hear bums in my ear, so let's put it that way.
Yes. And singing dogs occasionally.
Yes, indeed. The question has come up, it's like, from a lot of journalists, it's like, how does it feel to be part of the success of Wicked? I think the more important thing I realised on number one and number two is it's wonderful to be part of something that brings a lot of joy. And I've worked on films that have done that. I've been very lucky. I've also worked on films that you realise aren't actually very joyful. They're entertaining for 2 hours, but this seems to hold space for people's joy for a long time for them, and I think that's why you get those kind of nice comments from fans. It means a lot to people, and it can be a sort of a. I mean, we had some great photos sent by friends who had dragged the husbands and boyfriends to the film and then deliberately took video of them crying, you know, which is a bit cruel, but I kind of like that. I thought, yeah, okay, well, if we managed to get them to cry, then, you know, this has been good. I'm not that crying is necessarily joyful, but I think some kind of emotional ride is what we go to the cinema for, you know, and it's sometimes hard to get, and it's very hard to be part of a film that does it so effectively. So that was the thing for me, is like, you know, a joyful film, very hard to be part of, very hard to do, but very well worth it in the end, I think.
I remember texting you during this time that you were writing, which I think was this summer through the fall, and although you said the film making process started to settle in, you personally weren't settled. You weren't even in this space because of the fires, and where were you? Writing this? Yeah,
this is I was here on the January the 7th, you know, when the fires broke out, and I was pissed off because I was trying to do Dragons, and we had to get out, and so I was in various rentals, but then and Hans very kindly lent me a place to work on Dragons. But once I'd finished that, then I got into Wicked for good, and we managed to find a really nice place in Santa Monica that had an ADU at the back. So I was in the granny flat out back, which was great because it was kind of nice, but it didn't sound great, and I didn't have anybody else around me. All my guys were on the other end of Zooms. But it was comfortable. I had the Poodles, I had a couch, I had the gear I needed. Occasionally, you know, I had too much noise outside, but that was fine. Once it got hot, it was hard because it didn't have very good air conditioning. But it was nice and quiet generally, and that was really all I needed, I think. But it wasn't, you know. It's nice to be back here, I must say.
But it is incredible how you adapted. I mean, you're talking about the fluidity of constantly having to work your cues once the cuts change and make it sound like music, and, you know, 4 frames gone here, 20 here, and you still make music out of it. Obviously, music editors help with that, but it's not done until the dub stage.
Yeah.
But to have written this, you know, coming off of Dragons in a place that you weren't 100% comfortable is pretty remarkable, I think.
Well, you know, at the very beginning of my career, I used to work in a garage, you know what I mean? Writing music in a garage, not just working in a garage. And I remember, you know, trying that with headphones, and then you'd get weird mixes, and then you'd take off the headphones, and then it would boom around the room. You kind of get used to it. It takes about 4 or 5 days to sort of get over your own ears, I think. And once I kind of got comfortable, then it was fine. You know, but once I finished, I was actually glad to move back here. Once we had a chance to get back in here, it was all cleaned and changed and everything. So
I was going to say the one constant you've had, even though you had to leave your home, has been the Poodles. And when I used to work with you, you would sit down below, and the Poodles would run around your rig, and you would keep writing. You wouldn't even stop. It was just so funny. So did they do anything like that on this one?
Well,
no, because your rig wasn't.
It was too small. The rooms. Well, they would do it out in the garden. Yeah, they would chase each other, and they would be barking, and I wasn't allowed to be in there on my own. If I closed the door, there'd be scratches, and then they'd come in, and then I'd close the door, and then they'd scratch to go out. And so eventually, you start screaming at them. Like, just make up your fucking mind. But Poodles don't. That's one of the things. They're a very kind of they're an animal that likes to test their environment and test the people around them. Well, I mean, it's hard to tell from this, but
yeah.
No, it was suitable because it was suitable because the film, you know, we were talking about this. The film is very much about animals as well. There's a whole, you know, one of the things that somebody told me very early is, you know, we should judge our society by how we treat our animals. That was one of the things I loved about this the story in this.
Right.
Which, you know, apart from the love story between, you know, Glinda and Elphaba, you know, that friendship. It was that, you know, somebody cared. Somebody cared things were going wrong. We need those people.
Yeah, and it comes through. I mean, emotionally, there's some really sparse moments that you've scored where you feel so much as an audience member that, and you go from huge orchestral moments to the moments like when Nessa is floating and then she's falling, and it comes to really beautiful kind of texture of just some harmonics and trim and a little piano. And so you really, when the moment is so personal and emotional, you back off. And then, I mean, especially on the finale, it's just really something, you know, by then people are all crying. How do you deal with the pull and play of the emotions without overdoing it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try and hold on to the first time I see the film, and that kind of emotional journey. So then it's really a question of, you know, it's like, where is the audience at? In fact, George Miller was the one to really educate me about this. Is, you know, don't push, and he described it as being on a wave. He said, very Australian, very surfer sort of thing. It's like, you have to be on a wave. If the wave's too steep, you'll just fall off the front of it. If the wave's too shallow, you don't get any forward motion. So he was just describe music as trying to be this perfect wave to keep everything going at a consistent pace through not a single tempo, but a consistent kind of support. You know, that was constantly and confidently supporting you all the way through. He always called it authoritative. He liked the music to feel authoritative, and I think that's what I try and bring to the thing. This thing is like, if I'm going to be useful, that's one of the things I can be useful. It's like I can make it sound like we know what we're doing.
Well, I think you did.
Trust me, I've been
Great
in films.
job about that.
There's a lot of films I've done where it doesn't sound like any of us know what we're doing, but this is one, I think, between John and Mark and Stephen, where everybody knew what they were doing, even though it was a big leap to see how it would work. You know, so I that's why I think I was cast well.
Well, can you talk about how you experiment at the beginning of the process of writing? You work on your themes, and you're trying to get the palette and the sound of the film. How did you do that for this film when there were already these established songs?
It's interesting because, you know, we all do this. This is sort of a thing now where we all write, you know, suites of music and try stuff out away from picture. Couldn't really do that on this one. There was too much music already there in the songs. I would just dip into scenes, you know, and just start. And when things started to make sense to me, I'd collect a few things up, and then I'd see if I can get John, and I'd try things on him. And he would respond. You know, that didn't mean if he didn't like it, I would throw it away. I mean, I'd keep it in my back pocket, and maybe there was something about it that he wasn't responding to. He would. Well, sometimes you describe things. You know, you say, okay, this is Glinda's Queen Glinda theme, and he didn't like the idea that she was Queen Glinda, and I never really kind of understood that until we got to the end, and it's because even then when she's putting the crown on, she's not actually Queen Glinda. She's like, fuck you, Glinda.
She doesn't.
So, and so I think he didn't like that tune when I first played it to him. So I then had to change the name of the tune.
You changed the name and it got approved.
I mean, sort of, in the sense that, like all of these things, you can adapt your themes, and once you put them in the right place, and they're going in the right tempo, and they're in the right key, they'll work much better. You know, abstract music is very hard to talk about. Abstract storytelling is hard to talk about. The idea is that it's all in the cracks that we can't describe. So I just would keep going if I thought the tune was going to work, and it does. I mean, it's that tune, that same tune that he was a bit against, simply because I'd called it Queen Glinda. That's the one that, when they're after For Good, when they're at the wall, that moment is the final kind of use of that tune.
So you did finally use it.
Oh, yeah,
one of the most emotional moments of the film.
I knew it was going to work. I knew it. That's why I didn't drop it, because I've had that before. It's like okay, well, even if they don't like it, what I must be doing something slightly wrong with it. But it has this thing that I know is going to develop into what my emotion from that very first time I watched it with no music. That's the wave I'm trying to track, my own emotional wave. So if that material is going to do it for it, it's wrong of me to just throw it away because they don't like the tune. I'm doing it wrong. Then I have to figure out what I've done wrong, the harmony, the tempo, the key, the orchestration. Somebody asked me the other day, it's like, what do you think is your greatest strength for your career? And I just said tenacity. You just have to keep trying.
Right.
That's why it's exhausting. I mean, I find it exhausting. Yeah, I'm very glad when we get to the end of these things, and I love that I've done it, and I love the result. But boy, it's good when you got it in the can.
So it's all in the can, and people can hear the score soundtrack. They've all been waiting for it. I think the finale was posted online.
Yes.
And people love that finale that you did with the choir. And
yeah, I got one great comment I did read, which was, you have to wait for 2.5 minutes until the actual finale starts.
Really?
Yeah, but these are super fans who are waiting to hear, Ariana sing. I don't blame them at all. So that's the finale for them. But it was part of a bigger thing that Stephen and I had to work over and over and over to make. So fuck it, I'm going to put that whole thing together. It made sense in the storytelling. It's made sense in the film. That's the experience I want people to have when they hear the score. I mean, if you listen to that whole score now, you will hear the whole thing. You will hear everything that we told is in the music and more. And sometimes, that's where I've come from music, which is I listened to symphonies as a kid and I heard stories in them. And I hope people hear that. I hope it matches the story they saw, but also could match stories they also have in their own head as well. And they might be parallel, they might be different. That's the joy of music. So the score on its own should have its own set of values, and it should have its own way of telling the core part of this this tale.
Well, there's one last thing that we talked about, because Steven Schwartz has already created this amazing musical world, and then you have to pretty much drop your ego, right, to be able to come into this as a composer. And do you drop it, or do you say, here's me, this is the way I'm doing it? What can you talk about the composer's ego as a part of the process in writing a film score? This is a different situation than an underscore for purely underscore.
Yeah, we've talked about this. It's like the ego is what drives us. You need it. You have to try. When John says to me, I need this to break my heart, I have to use my ego to even think that I can write music that will help and be that emotional. So a lot of my emotion is right in there in the music, and part of the difficulty of working on film scores is then you get it slapped down. It's like, no, that's wrong, but I put my heart in this, and then to be immediately told that you're everything you feel about something is wrong. It's a quite a painful process, and I actually got to a point with John where I had to say to him, you have to give me a minute. If you're going to make me put my heart into this and open it up and then put it out there, and then you just turn around and slap it down, you just have to give me a minute to calm down. It's like, all right, it's going to be hard, and that's the thing, is that your ego is there for very good reason, but then you have to realize, okay, you're part of a team, you know. And yes, Stephen had already created it. He had created it, and people have loved it for so long. I kind of had the same thing with solo with John Williams.
That's right.
You know, and somebody was asking me the other day, is like, why would you sign on to something that was where you're kind of jumping into somebody else's musical universe? And my answer is, well, I'm only going to jump into people's musical universes when they're good.
Yeah.
And they are, you know, John's and Stephen's. So I got lucky in that universe. And of course, yeah, you have to say, okay, this isn't my show, but what can I bring to it? Again, going right back to the beginning,
Right,
can I be useful? You know, and so I just tried to be useful. But it doesn't mean my ego wasn't like jumping out my throat all the time, you know, of course. But you know, I learned things from John about that, and we had a wonderful kind of relationship where I could be honest with him, and he would be honest with me, and I'd understand why he was doing things, and he would understand what I was trying for, and he could. You know, I've often wanted to say to directors, you know, treat me like one of your actors. You know, I'm fragile too. But in theory, we're supposed to get paid enough to not be too fragile.
Right. A fan from Wicked who wrote on YouTube after hearing the finale of Wicked for Good, quote, "Now it's complete. Thank you, Mr. Swartz and Mr. Powell." No. And I think you've done an amazing job of telling that story over the two films, and I hope people enjoy the soundtrack and the film. And congratulations.
Thank you, dear. Thank you very much.